Good morning. Right now we have a few church announcements from Miss Joan.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Let's see, where do I go? Where do I start, Caroline? Sorry.
I thought you had them. I didn't have them.
Oh, I don't know. Either.
Okay. No worries. I just didn't know if you had anything you had to say. Okay. All right. We'll try that again. Good morning. We're going to skip the announcements right now. My name is Caroline Dominguez, and I'm the worship leader for the day, and I'm going to do my best to make Reverend Ma and Marilyn proud. Welcome to Unitarian Coastal Fellowship. As Unitarian Universalists, we are people of all ages, races, national origins, abilities, classes, sexual orientations, and gender identities. We believe that all people have inherent worth and dignity and work toward a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. This year's Black History Month theme is African Americans and the Arts. With us today is Reverend Dr. Gaye Morris, and she has invited us into the spiritual practice of film watching. I hope that before this worship, our congregates viewed the award-nominated movie, One Night in Miami. Anybody get to watch that? Perfect. It's an incredible night where icons Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown gather to discuss their roles. Reverend Dr. Morris is here today with her husband, Reverend David Morris. Both are retired from active UU ministry and live in Manteo with their grandson, Oliver, and a few goofy hound dogs. Too bad they couldn't bring them with us. Her academic interest has always been in theology and film, and we are glad to have her with us. Also with us today are my worship assistant, Mariana Newman, my accompanist, Megan Smith, and Karen and Barbara on tech. And if you guys would turn around and say hi to Zoom, that would be helpful. Are there any visitors in today? Would you like to say hi and use the mic? You don't have to. Okay. Chris says hi. Welcome, Chris. Heather and Chris. And now we are changing our usual order of service to hear from Sandy Hewitt, Director of Family Promise. Every month we share the plate with a charity selected by the Social Justice Team. The month of February is designated for Family Promise, an organization that is very important to this congregation. Is Miss Sandy in here so she can come chat with us? And you can adjust it as necessary.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me back. Barb and Harriet invited me to come back again this year, so I guess I did okay last year. For those of you who might be new and don't know who Family Promise or what Family Promise is, we are the only organization in Carteret County that helps homeless families. So if you're a single mom or a single dad, husband and wife, or couples, we help you in times of imminent danger when it comes to being homeless with your children. We have a lot of people who come to us that have been living in their car with their kids, and I don't know if you know this, but that's illegal, and your children could be removed from you if that's the case. So most of the women, single moms that come to us, and that's probably the majority of the people we serve are single moms, single parents. It is a great time of worship and fellowship and support and growth for a lot of these women and men. We help them find jobs. We help them get a better education to find a better job. But our biggest responsibility, we feel like, is to our children. And so for many of our kids, it's they need remediation in school, they need clothing, there's just so many things. They need counseling. They've seen a lot of things, y'all. Opioid addiction is rampant in this county, and a lot of our children are seeing the effects of what happens if that's in your household. And so we do a lot to support those kind of parents. Anyway, people ask me, sorry about that. People ask me all the time, how does somebody become homeless today? There are jobs everywhere. I get that. You know, there are jobs everywhere. But for some people, that is not always the case. Just because you don't pay your bills and you might become evicted isn't why you come to Family Promise. I want to tell you a little story about something that happened last year and how this church helped fix that problem. About this time last year, I had been to lunch, and when I came back, there was a family of 5 sitting at our dining room table. Our office is at 1500 Arundel Street, if y'all ever want to come by and say hey. So, of course, I sat down with them, and I said, so, you know, what's going on? And it was a mom and a dad and 3 boys. One was 5th grade, 7th grade, and 9th grade. And they were all football players, so you can imagine the size of these boys. I mean, big boys. And everybody was very quiet except Mom. And a lot of times Mom leads the voice in the household, as many of you husbands might know that. Anyway, she started telling me that her husband had had 3 heart attacks in a matter of 2 months. And he was a truck driver for 20 years. Anyway, so he was the main provider. Mama was going to school at the college and trying to work on getting a degree. Well, the last surgery that Charles had for his heart condition, they called up his wife and told her that he wouldn't need to be coming back to work. So he had lost his job. And nobody could prove that his heart issues were based on the, you know, many, many years he spent traveling on the roads in a U-Haul, great big, you know, tractor-trailer truck. Anyway, they were homeless. They had no place to go. They had lost. They had become evicted because they couldn't pay the bills. So the first thing we did was sit down and talk about, okay, let's see, what are our alternatives? So I made a call to the Carteret County Public School System, who has a program called the McKinney-Vento Act, which is it is a program for students of homeless families. And it's all over the country now, so it is a now federal program. And so that organization actually said, we can put them up for a month or so at the hostess house in Newport. So I said, yeah, great, let's do it. So while they were staying at the hostess house, I made a telephone call to the president of the community college because Amanda was getting ready to have to quit to go into school because they couldn't afford that either. And so luckily with our partnership with the community college, she was able to go over and meet with Dr. Mancini, who is a big fan of Family Promise and what we do, and was able to get her the funding that she needed to be able to continue school, and she'll graduate with a medical degree in May. So we're real excited about that. We helped them be able to apply for Charles to get on disability. He did not qualify for whatever reason for work compensation. So we moved to the next, then we got them into the program for disability and helped them get an attorney that would expedite that along for them. We helped the boys get in to continue to be able to play football, each one of them in their area. West Carteret, the middle school, as well as not Little League, but some kind of league for fighters. Anyway, I think it was probably with Parks and Recreation. We bought cleats, we had tennis shoes, we helped them with their uniforms. At Christmas time this year, we were able to help them get the clothes they needed. And as you can imagine, high school kids and middle school kids can't just have something from Roses. You know, they really need to have something that identifies them as not being homeless or poor. So we were able to help them do that, and they moved into a place of their own. She got a job in Havelock, so they moved into a little 2-bedroom place for 5 people. But it was working. We've provided food for them. We've helped them with their electric bill a couple of times. And the other day, they came by to see me. They knocked on the door, went to the door, and I hadn't seen them since sometime about November. And the mom and dad walked in again, and I was just tickled to death to see them. And they came into my office and sat down, and for the first time, Charles was so happy. You know, if you've been the care or the primary financial leader of the household for 20 years, and all of a sudden now you don't bring in any money, you can understand maybe some depression, and there was a lot of it on his behalf. Anyway, they were thrilled to death to say they got the telephone call that his disability came through. And they had been looking for a place online and praying about it, and finally got the opportunity to go here in Morehead City and look at it. It was a 4-bedroom, double-wide trailer. Y'all, it was perfect. It was perfect. And that trailer has become, and it's a really nice mobile home, I have to tell you, has become a new journey for them now. They've already been through one journey, but I want to tell you something that she said to me one time early on. She had come over after school one day to do her laundry at Family Promise, and she was doing her laundry, doing her homework, and all of a sudden she'd knocked on my door, and she says, "Miss Sandy, can you talk to me for just a minute?" And I said, "Absolutely, come on in." And she sat down, and before she could hardly sit down, she busted out crying. And we're talking boo-hoo crying. And I said, "Talk to me, tell me what's wrong." And she said, "Well, you know, with 5 people in one room, it was really hard to communicate with her husband how she was feeling through all of this." And she says, "I haven't talked about it." And she says, "Would you mind listening to me for a minute?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And she started telling me her side of the story and how she felt about, you know, the security that she used to have, the security their children had, the lifestyle they live, and now here they are in a 1-room, almost like hotel room, but they did have like a little kitchen in there. And she cried and she cried and she kept saying to me, "I just don't see a way. I don't see a way out of this. I just don't see a way." And finally, I got up and I asked her, I went and sat beside her and I put my hand on her leg and I said, "You know, I'm going to ask you a personal question. If you don't want to answer it, it's okay with me." Now, some of you may or may not know, we are a faith-based organization. And churches like yourself provide for, and fellowships like yourself provide for the services that we can do at Family Promise. But I said to Amanda, I said, "If you don't want to answer, it's okay." But I said, "Do you know Jesus Christ?" And she said, I do. And I said, then you know the way. He's your way maker. And y'all, they just clung to that. And when they came to see me the other day, she said, you were so right. You know, when we put our problems on the back of a higher being than we are, miracles can happen every single day. So I want to thank you guys for helping us support this family, support these children. Your money goes to a great cause when you donate it to Family Promise. And for the our board of directors and our volunteers and myself, there is so much gratitude for what you do and how you help us. And I really thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sandy. And now if I could invite all of those in the sanctuary to silence their cell phones. For those of us following on Zoom, if you would turn off your camera to conserve bandwidth. You can take a few moments and please turn and greet one another. Today's opening words are from Alice Walker, the author of The Color Purple. Have you ever found God in church? I never did. I just found a bunch of folks hoping for him to show. Any God I ever felt in church, I brought in with me. And I think all the other folks did too. They came to church to share God, not to find God. Come, let us worship together. Now I invite Reverend Gaye to read our chalice lighting, where my lovely assistant lights our candles for us. She's better than bad.
We cherish the light of our chalice and recall the power of the light we kindle today in the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." And we also light our peace candle to remind ourselves that peace is a process that requires work, that peace is not merely an absence of conflict, but the presence of justice.
Please join us in our opening hymn, 151, I Wish I Knew How. That was awesome. That was great. And now we have a time for all ages.
So this morning, we're reading a story by Laura Allery, Mira and the Big Story.
I can't read the first page until...
Okay, there it is.
There was once a green valley that lay between two mountains. Through the valley flowed a river. On each bank of the river there was a village. As long as anyone could remember, the people in the two villages had been enemies. Strange as it seems, their fight began with a couple of stories. Each of the villages had a different story about how the valley began and how their village came to be there. In one village, the people said that the King of Heaven looked down long ago and saw their ancestors wandering in a desert with no home. He created the beautiful valley just for them and sent birds to lead the people there. Now, they said, the valley belonged to them, a gift from the King of Heaven.
In the village across the river, the people said that the Queen of the Earth created the valley, and then looked all over the world for the perfect people to live there. She found their ancestors and sent giant turtles to carry them up the river to their new home. Now, they said, the valley belongs to them, a gift from the Queen of the Earth.
In both of the villages, the people said that the other village's story was wrong. The valley belonged to them, they said, and those other people across the river, they didn't belong there. No one should visit them. No one should talk to them. But in one village, there lived a little girl named Mira. She was very curious about the other village, so she climbed a tree to look across the river. The people on the other side didn't look so different from her own people. Mira was so curious that once or twice she even went to a shallow place in the river and waded across. Everything there looked just like home to her.
On one of her secret visits across the river, Mira slipped on the riverbank and hurt her foot before she could cross back to home. To her great surprise, a young boy who'd been hiding in a tree and watching her scrambled down and hurried over to her. "Are you hurt?" he said. "Can I help you?" And the young boy helped Mira to get to her feet and wade back across to her own side of the river. "Who are you?" Mira asked. "Where did you come from?" "From the other village, of course," the boy answered. "You're not the only one who's curious about the people across the river. I've never been brave enough to cross like you did, though. I have to go home now," he said, "but I hope we meet again." And back across the river he went. Mira was so confused. All her life, her people had told her the other villagers across the river weren't kind, good people like the ones in her village. But the boy seemed just like her. What could it mean? Mira knew just who to ask, the wisest, kindest man in her village, old Alfred. That very evening, Mira went to see old Alfred in his stone cottage. He gave her a cup of tea, and she said, "Old Alfred, I need your help with a big question."
"That's my favorite kind," he smiled. "What is your big question?"
Mira took a deep breath and told old Alfred about her secret trips to the other side of the river and about the boy who helped her. He listened patiently and then said,
"So, what's your question?"
"Is our story about our ancestors how our ancestors came to the valley wrong?" Mira asked in a worried voice.
"Mira, Let me tell you something about stories. Some stories can make your heart and your mind grow bigger, but some can fill up all the space inside so there's no room for any other stories at all. Whenever you hear a story, you should ask yourself, is this story making my heart and mind bigger or smaller? Both of the villages in our valley have a story that doesn't leave room for any other stories. And there will never be peace in our valley until both villages find a bigger story, one that makes room for all of us.
Do you know a story that big? Mira asked.
I do. Long, long ago, before there was anything, there was everything. Everything that ever was or is or would be, all together in a space smaller than the smallest thing you can imagine, smaller than a sunflower seed in the palm of your hand. Everything was there in this tiniest of spaces, but not quite there, like the sunflower is and isn't inside that tiny seed, like music is and isn't inside a violin or a guitar. Then there was light, an explosion of pure energy and light bigger than any star or candles or bonfires, and out of that great explosion of light and energy came tiny bits of stuff, the first stuff that ever was. Some of that matter came together and formed stars, and then the stars made new matter for ages and ages, and then when the time came for those stars to die, they exploded. All the stuff inside the oldest stars scattered into space, and that stardust became new stars and planets and everything. Clouds and comets, whales and wasps, dinosaurs and dragonflies, seahorses and sandwiches. From that old stardust came a little planet called Earth, and this valley, and this river, and 2 villages, and a little girl named Mira, and a boy. We all come from the same place. We're all made of the same stuff. We are neighbors of the whole universe and neighbors of each other.
Mira felt like her heart and mind were so full they would explode like the ancient stars. If this story is true, then no one owns the valley and we all belong here. If this story is true, we are all connected to each other and to everything else. The river, the valley, the mountains, the animals, the sky. If this story is true, we have wasted too much time being enemies. And Mira started to cry. But what about our story? What about the King of Heaven and the bird who led us to the valley?
Dear child, old Alfred said, you asked me a big question. Now I will ask you some. Who dreamed everything when there was nothing? Who started that first great outpouring of light and energy? Who opened the heart of that little boy you met? Who opened your mind enough to see him as another person just like you? Who made you both so curious about the people on the other side of the river? Mira, you have not lost the gift of the valley or the story of the King of Heaven. They are both part of a much bigger story than you ever dreamed. The King of Heaven, the Queen of the earth, and all the villages and all the valleys that ever were are part of the story of everything.
Mira thought of the boy across the river. She wanted to find him again and learn his name. Maybe they would become friends. Maybe other children would cross the river, and grown-ups too. I like your story, she told old Alfred. I think it's big enough for everyone.
Well then, old Alfred said, perhaps you can share the story with someone else.
I will, Mira promised. I already know where to start. And she went home, knowing just what she needed to do.
Thank you both for that insightful story. Next is our joys and concerns. In our sacred space of joys and concerns, the trials and tribulations of life are more manageable when shared, and our joys will multiply when shared as well. I invite you to join in our stones and water ritual. We line up against the wall, that one over there. We select stones or shells out of our basket and gently place them in the chalice of water. Should you wish to share a personal joy or concern about a person in your life, there's a piece of paper on that little table you can fill out and place in the basket on your way to the chalice. And after our ritual, I will read those personal joys and concerns to the congregation. We want to remember the 3 American service members who died in Jordan this week. In addition, 40 people were wounded in the attack. Those dead are Army Reserve soldier Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, 46, Specialist Kennedy Landon Sanders, 24, and Specialist Breonna Alexandria Moffat, 23. During Black History Month, we note that all 3 were people of color. And remember their outside contributions to our national military. We also want to remember the people of Israel and Gaza, embroiled in war entering the 5th month, and especially the tragedy of over 11,000 children who have died in the conflict since October 7th. These stones are for them. Please join me in a moment of silence. Please join us in the blessing song. Sing, you were born, and it matters what you do. What you know about God is the peace of the truth, the beauty, love. Be what you do, and you don't have to do it alone. It's a blessing. And it matters what I do. Brother.
South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu envisions God's dream for the world through a message of hope, justice, peace, and inclusion when he says, "Dear child of God, before we can become God's partners, we must know what God wants for us. I have a dream," God says. "Please help me to realize it. It is a dream of the world whose ugliness and squalor and poverty, its war and hostility, its greed and harsh competitiveness, its alienation and disharmony are changed into their glorious counterparts, where there will be more laughter, joy, and peace, where there will be justice and goodness and compassion and love, caring and sharing. I have a dream that swords will be beaten into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks, that my children will know that they are members of one family, the human family, God's family, my family. In God's family, there are no outsiders. All are insiders. Black and white, rich and poor, gay and straight, Jew and Arab, Palestinian and Israeli, Roman Catholic and Protestant, Serb and Albanian, Hutu and Tutsi, Muslim and Christian, Buddhist and Hindu, Pakistani and Indian, all belong. We have heard of God's dream from his prophets throughout history and in modern times, from great leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who dreamed of the day that the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners in Georgia would be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. Let these words inspire us in our own struggles for equality. Blessed be. Amen. Archbishop Tutu could have also said, "It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is going to come." But those words, actually, you may recognize, come from a song by Sam Cooke, "A Change is Going to Come." It was released posthumously 2 weeks after Cooke's tragic death in 1964. It's become known as a prophetic masterpiece, and it originates from the experience that Cooke had of persistent racism. "A Change is Going to Come" has been used to great effect in films such as Spike Lee's Malcolm X and Regina King's One Night in Miami. Clinging on to hope that change will come is a theme that permeates the creative arts in Black culture. So this morning, I'd like to invite you to reflect on what we see and understand in film about the Black experience in America, and on how our often unconscious beliefs and attitudes about race arise from the cultural myth of Blackness evident in the earliest days of cinema, and from the problematic authorship of films by white people about Black people. But we'll also celebrate the advances made in the 21st century to empower authentic voices of Black people in the stories told through film. My hope this morning is to invite you into a spiritual practice of film watching during Black History Month, which began as Negro History Week in 1926. Since 1976, when President Gerald Ford officially designated the month of February as Black History Month, it's become a valuable time set aside to appreciate Black history. It also offers us an opportunity to open our hearts and steel our resolve to be a part of the transformation of our society and our country as the struggle for racial justice continues into 2024. Film watching puts us into a kind of vicarious living and gives us stories that help us reflect on who we are and why we're here, just like the story of Mira. Rudyard Kipling once said, "If history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten." Films of all genres may educate and inform us about historical events we didn't know about, or bring us into the psychological, social, and political realms of the Black experience. The good news is that there are many wonderful films on release this year that will enhance your spiritual practice. First, let's remind ourselves of the epic power of American cinema to promote racism, first expressed in D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation in 1915. Its plot involves a family in post-Civil War South Carolina under attack from violent Black Union soldiers until rescued by the Ku Klux Klan. The NAACP fought against the screening of Birth of a Nation because of the racist storyline. The theme of white supremacy is underlined in the film by the caricatures of Black villains who threaten the purity of white women. Their cruel and brutish behavior signifies the consequences of Reconstruction and of the Northern victory that destroyed the genteel, civilized Southern way of life, which was, needless to say, underpinned by slavery. Another racist stereotype is played out in Gone with the Wind, the film by David Selznick that won 10 Oscars in 1939. Remember the line, "I don't know nothing about birthing no babies"? Prissy is one example of slaves who are played for laughs, whose ignorance is highlighted as shorthand for dehumanizing them and as a rationale for unequal treatment. Slaves who are grateful for their protective owners appear as well as a nostalgia for plantation life in mainstream films of that period, besides Gone with the Wind, like Song of the South, and even The Littlest Rebel, starring Shirley Temple. By the mid-20th century, black actors were able slowly to dispel stereotypes and gain legitimacy for black characters in film. One of those was Sidney Poitier, who just died in January 2022. He was the first black man to win an Oscar for his role in the 1964 film Lilies of the Field. Poitier once said he felt as if he was representing 15, 18 million people with every movie he made. He found himself in saintly roles, but nevertheless, those were an advance on the demeaning parts blacks had been given by Hollywood in the past. In 2009, his relentless devotion to breaking down barriers led to President Obama awarding Poitier the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Until recently, films about blacks, no matter how critically acclaimed or popular with American moviegoers, were almost exclusively made by white people. This is problematic in terms of representation and authorship. One example is the 1985 film The Color Purple, adapted from a book written by a black woman, Alice Walker, but made into a film by a white man, Steven Spielberg. It was groundbreaking because it was the first all-black cast movie to gross over $100 million in American ticket sales, yet it faced fierce controversy, including boycotts from black organizations like the NAACP, and criticism from leaders like Louis Farrakhan. At the same time, black women politicians like Maxine Waters and Shirley Chisholm were fans and spoke out loudly in support of the film and its strong female characters. One moving story you might not know about the making of The Color Purple is the casting of Oprah Winfrey as the character of Sophia Butler, a strong-willed black woman whose independent spirit clashes with the racist and sexist times in which the story is set. Excuse me. We know Oprah as a megastar who has had, 92 award nominations. Thank you. Thanks. She's had 92 award nominations, including 2 Oscar nominations, including being the first African American woman nominated for Best Picture for her role in Selma, and as a producer of over 60 films and television programs. But when Oprah, who at the time was a talk show host, read Alice Walker's book, her life was instantly transformed. She says that she opened the page and saw the line, "Dear God, 14 years old, what's happening to me?" The main character was 14 years old with a baby, and Oprah herself was raped as a young teen and gave birth to a baby who later died, and said to herself, "There's another human being with my story." Oprah heard about the film auditions and was determined to get the role of Sophia. She says the role for which she was nominated for an Academy Award was the single most defining experience she ever had, and she was puzzled by the protests against the film, grounded in its content matter of incest and lesbianism. It was said at the time that those were topics that black men didn't want portrayed. 6 months after losing out at the Oscars for her role as Sophia, Oprah went on the air and told her story for the first time since it happened, in the first of more than 200 television programs dealing with sexual abuse and molestation. She could speak out in a way that her character, Sophia, never could do. While Oprah found her experience transformative, the decade of filmmaking afterwards was, for the most part, a period offering a lack of access and few opportunities for Black directors. Spike Lee was a notable exception with his film Do the Right Thing in 1989, and also Malcolm X in 1992. James Baldwin originally wrote a screenplay about Malcolm X, but when the Jewish director Norman Jewison took on the directing project, Spike Lee was loud in his criticism, saying that the story belonged to Black film. After Jewison left the project, Lee replaced him. His vision with Malcolm X, as it was with his more recent Oscar-winning film Black Klansman, was to bring images of contemporary Black experiences into the story's interpretation. And I can't recommend Black Klansman strongly enough if you haven't seen it. Its ending literally left movie audiences stunned. One of the most recent feel-good films for Black audiences, while still being a film that appeals to all Marvel fans, is Black Panther. It's been called a fantasy about Black power. The comic, of course, was created by white writers in 1966, a time when racial stereotyping and caricature were common in American culture. The film was a box office success in 2018, popular for its nostalgia for an African homeland, and its assertive idea of a Black hero of proud heritage operating within Black geopolitical power. In 21st century Hollywood, the Black Lives Matter and hashtag Oscars So White movements have put pressure on white power brokers. Also, success at the box office for films like Black Panther, Moonlight, Get Out, and especially the musical remake of The Color Purple have shown that Black stories can draw audiences. The importance of young filmmakers like Ava DuVernay is that they center the Black experience. They create history-based stories that reject white savior narratives like Spielberg's Amistad. DuVernay sees her films, including Selma and the documentary The 13th, as offering both remedial education and a voice to challenge the present, which she says is still rife with prejudice due to generations of oppressive, calculated misinformation. DuVernay's latest film, Origin, was released about 2 weeks ago, and it creatively adapts the best-selling book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It combines the narratives of the slave trade, the Third Reich, segregation in the American South, and caste clashes in India. Black filmmakers who dramatize the terrors of slavery, injustice, and oppression may feel they go a long way to documenting the African American experience in cinematic form. Unitarian Universalist minister Aisha Ansano says that white people tend to be visitors to the struggle for racial justice, ones that aren't forced to be there, but can choose to come in and leave whenever they like. People of color reside in the struggle for racial justice by virtue of their race. The Reverend Otis Moss III tells the story of how his father's generation bore the brunt of discrimination and segregation, but still, through their faith, were able to bear up. He says his minister father asked one of the elders of his church, which happened to be Tabernacle Baptist in my hometown of Augusta, Georgia, "How are you doing, Mother?" And she replied, "I'm living between, oh Lord, and thank you, Jesus." Residing in the struggle means never knowing what life may bring, but remaining thankful for the blessings that may come. The Outer Banks Film Society, in its first year with over 60 members, just last week screened the film Judas and the Black Messiah. And like One Night in Miami, it's a movie that educates the film audience about recent Black history. The film's lead actor, Daniel Kaluuya, won an Oscar in 2021 for his portrayal of Black Panther's leader, Fred Hampton. Now, those of us who grew up during the civil rights struggles of the 50s, 60s, and 70s may recall the way the Black Panthers were vilified in the media and by the government and the FBI as militant and dangerous. The organization's aim, yes, was to spark revolution in this country, but also to encourage Black power, which they defined as the self-determination and survival of Black communities. What I didn't know about the Black Panther Party was that in 1969 it started a social program, Free Breakfast for School Children, which was so successful that it inspired the USDA school breakfast program that today feeds more than 14 million children before school. Imagine living in a time when your community has needs that aren't being fulfilled by your public servants, but instead by political outlaws. The free food program was so dangerous to the establishment that in San Francisco, parents were told by authorities that the food was infected with venereal disease. And the night before the first breakfast program in Chicago was due to open, the Chicago police broke into the serving site, a church, mashed up all the food, and urinated on it. So Judas and the Black Messiah is another of those most recent films that opens the eyes of the audience to another side of the American experience. It's exciting and sobering, and speaking as a white moviegoer, not a little uncomfortable to hear louder than ever the advocacy for Black voices and justice for Black lives in today's society expressed by filmmakers like Spike Lee and Regina King. They create stories that sometimes we would rather not acknowledge as our legacy. Themes of injustice and white supremacy are historical and make great stories, but unfortunately, they still play out in our society today. Filmmakers are influenced personally and professionally by what they see going on around them. Brian Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, which tells of his efforts to take on a corrupt legal system and the school-to-prison pipeline so prevalent in Black communities, was made into a film in 2020 starring Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. There's a list of films I suggest for your viewing pleasure during Black History Month in your order of service, but I left one off that is actually up for an Oscar next month. It's a film called Rustin. The actor Coleman Domingo plays Bayard Rustin, who was an amazing influence to Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. I hope some of you were able to watch One Night in Miami. If you haven't seen it, please catch up with it. Joining Black female filmmakers like Ava DuVernay and Shonda Rhimes, Regina King made her directorial debut in 2020 with One Night in Miami. The story is based on the actual night in 1964 when Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, Jim Brown, the football player, and Cassius Clay in Miami all joined together following Clay's upset World Heavyweight Championship match against Sonny Liston. It's a fictionalized screenplay that suggests that these four spent a night in deep and sometimes contentious discussion about Blackness and racial injustice in America. These men, powerful each in their own way, heard Malcolm X urge them to use their voices in the cause of justice. And near the end of the film, Sam Cooke performs A Change Is Gonna Come, and the scene serves as a glimpse into that tumultuous time in American history and how it impacts the future of these men. No film can tell the future. It can only suggest the way creative imaginations see it. It's so valuable for audiences of every color to see Black filmmakers finally claiming authorship of the narrative of change and to hear the authentic voices of the Black cinematic community. It's been a long time coming, and we can use this month to inform, educate, and entertain ourselves with wonderful stories. As old Alfred says to Mia, whenever you hear a story, you must ask yourself, what is the story doing to me? Is it making me bigger or smaller? Our hearts and minds need to be stretched so we can make room for others. Blessed be. Amen.
Thank you for those wonderful words. Please join us in song and stand as you are willing and able. 147, When All Peoples of This Earth. I just want to remind everybody that we're flying the Black Lives Matter flag for the month. Now for our offertory. We want to remind everyone that 1/2 of everything in the plate from all 4 Sundays in February will go to Family Promise, as mentioned by Ms. Sandy Hewitt. Thank you for educating us on the mission of our community. Would the greeters come forward to collect today's offering, please? Please join in blessing this offering with hymn 402, From You I Receive. We will sing it twice through. You I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and for this we live. You're such a lovely assistant. And now please join me in having Reverend Gaye read our chalice extinguishing words as Mariana extinguishes our flames.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now in Espanol. Extinguimos este llama pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez. Our closing hymn is number 168, One More Step.
Thank you, everyone. That was beautiful. Now I invite you all to hold hands as we end our time together. Please feel free to touch elbows or opt out of the connected shape we are going to try to create, and stay in the center of for our benediction from Reverend Gaye.
As we leave, we give thanks for our community, and we pray that in the week ahead, we may open ourselves up to the goodness of the universe, responding to it with awe and wonder and love. Blessed be. Amen.
Sorry about the announcement.
Oh, no, you're fine.
They're written out.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head.
This one.